Greetings once again, friends, live from Retro Central. My name is Peter, and this is Retro Unscripted. Today's episode is episode number 33, a pair of threes in the hole. I thank you very much for watching today, and I hope that you enjoy my work. 2000 is going to be, or is, the 15th anniversary of the PlayStation 2. We've already just recently celebrated the 15th anniversary of the Japanese launch of the system, and later on this year in the fall, we'll be celebrating the 15th anniversary here in the United States. The PlayStation 2 ranks just behind the NES in terms of not only influential, but favorite consoles of all time on my list. There are a variety of reasons for that. The PlayStation 2 was instrumental in helping me get off the ground with my career, and I put that in quotes, in the gaming press. Owning a PlayStation 2 opened a lot of doors to write reviews and to get involved in writing at a time when I really wasn't sure how I was going to latch on somewhere. So that was important. The PlayStation 2 was also instrumental in some very difficult times in my personal life where I was going through a period of unemployment, a period of some health issues, my separation and subsequent divorce from my wife. These things and more, the PlayStation 2 and the games gave me an outlet for life's frustration and gave me a little bit of an escape when I really needed one. So the PlayStation 2 and I are kind of like Tom and Jerry. We're synonymous with each other. And that's one of the reasons why when I look at the library of games that I have, which numbers over 1,000, a good majority of those, more than 700 games, are in the PlayStation 2 library. Because the library is just so expansive and so varied, and most importantly, because the games lately have been so inexpensive to acquire, I'm happy to say that my library is where it is and continues to expand throughout 2015 and beyond. But going back to 2000 in the fall, the PlayStation 2 wasn't even on my mind in terms of a release and a purchase for myself. I was still very much involved with the PlayStation, the original PlayStation, playing games like Final Fantasy IX and Chrono Cross and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and its sequel, and the sports games that were coming out not only from EA but also from Sony's first-party studios. Midway was still supporting the system. I could go on and on. So the PlayStation was nowhere near dead. In fact, the PlayStation and its library of software was continuing to grow at a pretty good rate at that time. So that's one. Two, I was very, very invested in the Dreamcast at the time. Those of you who have watched past videos probably remember that I bought the Dreamcast on launch day on September 9th of 1999, and I dropped more than $700 between cash and store credit on the system, on accessories, and on a bevy of games, ranging from arcade ports to sports games to fighting games. And the Dreamcast in 2000, especially in late 2000, was still pretty much holding its own. There wasn't any evidence that Sega was going to be doing anything but continuing to support it. So I was pretty happy with where I was as a gaming consumer. The PlayStation was keeping me busy, the Dreamcast was keeping me busy, and I was even playing a few games on my Nintendo 64 console, so I was good. Then came the big announcement in late January of 2001, where Peter Moore came out and let everybody know that Sega was going to be discontinuing the Dreamcast and that games were going to be slowly but surely going away. I was pissed. Really, there's no easier way or cleaner way to put it. I was very, very upset. I remember I was a participant on the GameSpot message boards back at that time, back when Ziff Davis owned them, and I voiced my frustration and my anger that way. How could they do this? I spent so much money; it feels like a waste. You know, how could Sega stab me in the back like that? I was very emotional and very upset because I was so invested. So how was I going to get revenge? How was I going to get back at Sega for what I felt was a personal affront? Well, what I didn't do, I didn't write any letters to Sega. I didn't threaten Peter Moore and to burn down his house or anything that people tend to do in this day and age for some reason. Um, and after complaining on the message boards a little bit, which I could have handled better, my best bet was just to take all of my Dreamcast stuff, all of it, the extra controllers, the VMUs, all of the games, put it into 2 plastic or paper bags, and bring them to my local game store, which is what I did. Fantasy Realms, which I've talked about in past videos, was my local independent game store. And I went there one day during the day. I was sick from work that day. I was recovering from a bout with the flu. And I walked into the store with the 2 bags. Then I put them down next to me, and I asked the owner, his name's Guy, I asked him if he had any PlayStation 2 systems in stock, and he said yes. He had one left. I said, great, I want it. I put the bags of stuff on the counter. He's like, is that your Dreamcast? I'm like, yes. I want to trade all of the stuff in, and I want to get a PS2. Why? I tried to hold him off. I said, I just want to do the trade-in first. So we went through all of my Dreamcast stuff, and I had a good sum. I probably had $500 worth of store credit at that point, and I had another $100 worth in my pocket. And I just went on a buying spree. And I just started picking stuff off the wall. And I'll share some of that with you in a moment. And we went through our transaction. I didn't have to pay anything out of pocket. And as he's putting everything into the bag and I'm getting ready to leave, he asked me again why I was trading everything in. And I told him about the announcement because it hadn't been made public yet. It was only talked about on message boards and rumored. And he was just shocked. He said, I would have done the same thing. And I walked out with my new stuff, and I went home and I set everything up. And this is what I bought that day. Ridge Racer 5. I am a big Ridge Racer fan and continue to be to this day. I loved the first game. It was what helped sell me on the original PlayStation. Ridge Racer Revolution, although it's not much of an upgrade, still kind of cool. Rage Racer was completely different and one of my favorite games in the series, as well as Ridge Racer Type 4. So I had to have this. It made sense. So this was one of the games I got. Next up, and I'll show both of these together because they kind of go together like peanut butter and jelly. This is, and I'll try and get my hands out of the way. This is Madden and NHL 2001. I am a big sports video game fan. I know that a lot of people are not. They think that they're a waste of time. But to myself, as someone who is not at all athletic and can barely walk in a straight line, being able to put myself in these games and to be able to make myself into a cyber athlete, as EA used to call them, was a big deal to me. So I had to get both of these. And the thing that sticks out about these games to me, even to this day, is how much of a jump that these games were from the PlayStation versions. 60 frames a second in many instances. Really cool close-ups on some of the instant replays. Two-man booths for commentary. I mean, these were next generation at that time and just blew me away. And every so often when I pop them in, they still blow me away now. Also, and I'll do this one first. This is Swing Away Golf from T&E Soft. I've talked in past videos about my relationship with golf, how my grandmother and I used to watch golf on TV when I was younger. And this was kind of a carryover from that. I didn't see a Tiger Woods or PGA Tour game at that time, so I figured I would grab this. And if you haven't played this, it's not bad. It's not the greatest game. There isn't any licensing in it, but you can create your own golf courses, and the story mode is actually pretty in-depth. So if you find this for cheap, I wound up getting this replacement for $2. It's worth it. And then last but not least, one of the more recognizable games from early in the PlayStation 2 library. This is SSX, of course. I am terrible at this. I never really, even to this day, I haven't got the grasp of how this game really controls. I'm more used to what Neversoft did with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, but it still remains as a very important game from early on in the PlayStation 2 lifespan. So those are the games that I got. I got the PlayStation 2 memory card as well, and I got the system. And I've had a PlayStation 2 in my library ever since. And it was within the first few weeks after I got my PS2 that I got my first writing job, and I put job in quotes because it wasn't a paid deal. But I started writing for About.com and their video game section, and then that just opened a bunch of doors from there. And I was really involved in video game reviewing from 2001 to 2005. And that's really when I grew as a writer, when I learned how to organize my thoughts into something that read a lot better than a wall of words. And I even learned a little bit about HTML at that point, which I knew nothing about. So a very formative time in my life, and the PlayStation 2 really had a lot to do with that. So I identify with it very closely. It is, as I mentioned, it's my second favorite console of all time, just behind the NES. And as long as I can get hardware to play the games on, it's going to be a console that I will enjoy for many, many, many years to come. So happy birthday, PS2. Thank you, Sony, for doing some amazing things. Thank you to all of the software companies that put out so many amazing games. When we celebrate the 15th anniversary of the PlayStation 2 later this year here in the US, I'll put together a list of my top 10 favorite PS2 games. That should give me a few months to try and narrow down the 700 games in my library down to 5 or 10. That's going to be a hell of a job, and I'll try and do that as best I can. So how about you? What are your memories of the PS2? Why don't you share those with me in the comments below if you would? I'd love to hear from you, what you think of the system, when you got it, what your first games were. Share those and we can talk about them. As always, friends, thank you very much for watching Retro Unscripted. This was episode 33. I'll look forward to shooting another episode in the next couple of weeks. I have spring break coming, so that's going to be great. It'll free up some time so I can get back in front of the camera and share some more experiences with you fine people. Thank you very much for watching, and until the next time, I will see you on the next episode of Retro Unscripted. Until then, take care.